Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Hi, I'm Jay Fallon. Thank you for listening to The Slippery Slope. So, for those that don't know me, I'll just explain a bit about my background. So, I'd spent just around 12 years as within the Queensland Police Service. 6 years was spent as I think it's referred to as the uh, covert covert Special Operations Unit. I think that was the umbrella. Anyway, so I was what's known as a covert surveillance officer, COVERT. People, yeah, covert surveillance officer. So that was my background. So, and then before that, I was in general duties. So, and this is the reason why I talk so much about policing issues within Australia, especially within Queensland. So I was seconded from the Queensland Police Service to I think I've said it before, but anyway, so I was just seconded to another unit and we did like long-term operations doing covert surveillance. So listen, I just want to talk. I'm just explaining that. So if you don't know me, you can maybe understand why I'm talking about these issues with law enforcement that we're having in Australia. So I just want to go through the latest on what's happened with the young boy who was charged by the Australian Federal Police. He was the target of an operation, a covert operation conducted, a joint operation between ASIO, which is the Australian Securities Intelligence Organisation. After reading this report, they should probably. I've heard that they might be changing their name, taking out the intelligence organisation and just going by Australian Securities Services, ASS for short. Yeah, so ASIO, so it was a joint operation between ASIO, the Australian Federal Police, and Victorian Police. So basically, the parents of a boy, he was 13 at the time, they realized that he was this boy who I believe it's reported he had autism, very low IQ. His IQ was been reported at being 71. Uh, he was investigating ISIS. He seemed to be infatuated with ISIS. His parents, you'd have to take your hat off to them. They went to the police, which is probably their first mistake. But anyway, they went to the police because they were concerned with the road that their child at 13 at the time was going down at the time. They were concerned with the direction he was going. So they thought, well, hey, let's go and talk to the police about it. Police uh, start looking into this child. Well, I'm going to go through this report. This is the latest report that the guard that's just come out in the Guardian. Only today, I believe. It says, I'll bring it up so we can all read it together. If you're following this on doing the video, there headline: ASIO boss defends undercover police operation targeting boy with autism. So this is an interview with the ASIO boss. There he is there, Mike Burgess. Oh, so he's the chief. I heard a rumor that he was going to they were going to change his title to head of Australian terrorism. So HAT for short. Yeah, so ASIO will be now known as ASS. He'll be known as HAT. Anyway, that's just a rumor. So the ASIO chief has insisted security agencies don't radicalize people, but admitted dealing with minors is incredibly difficult after court findings criticizing an undercover operation targeting a 13-year-old boy with autism. So the Guardian Australia revealed last month that the boy, known by the pseudonym Thomas Carrick, was granted a permanent stay on terror-related charges last October after the magistrate found police they fed his fixation with Islamic State during the operation and doomed his efforts at rehabilitation. So the Australian Federal Police Deputy Commissioner Ian McCartney told a parliamentary committee that a decision was made jointly between the AFP, ASIO, and federal and Victorian police that the threat, the real threat, had escalated to such a level that we had to take action. They had to take action. Nothing else they could do but take action, apparently, against 13 to 14-year-old boy. McCartney authorized a major controlled operation into the boy, which eventually resulted in his arrest soon after his 14th birthday in October 2021, 6 months after his parents had approached Victorian police for help dealing with his fixation. The head of Domestic Intelligence Agency, ASIO, also known as ASS, Mike Burgess, also known as the Hat, said he would not go into great details on this case because, as we all know, secrecy is key when it comes to these cases dealing with 13-year-old boys. But when asked to explain ASIO's role in signing off on the joint operation and whether it had done any soul searching over the matter, Burgess said the AFP was conducting a review. He goes on to say, we are a member of the joint counterterrorism teams in states and territories, and therefore we are a member of the joint counterterrorism team in Victoria. And when a member of that group takes action, we're backing that and we're part of that process, Burgess said. Of course, the police do their job. Now, he's differentiating here because when you're doing covert work and everything with from a state point of view, generally they're police officers. When your ASIO is involved, so if you've got an ASIO surveillance team that are out doing work, they are civilians. They're not, they're investigating things, but they're not law enforcement. They might be classified as agents, but they're not police. They don't get around. They're not armed or anything like that, and they don't have a lot of powers. We are a member of the joint counterterrorism teams in states and territories. Anyway, he goes. So, of course, the police do their job, we do our job, but I stand with them on the work that they've done. In the decision, Magistrate Leslie Fleming said the prospect of diverting and rehabilitating Thomas was destined to fail once the operative started communicating with him online. By operative, he means the police officer. So once the police, whichever officer it was, but once police got involved, his rehabilitation was destined to fail because they were, as he says, they fed his fixation, providing him with new terminology, new boundaries, and an outlet for him to express what was in part his fantasy world. You got to remember, 13 years old when they started investigating him. 13 years old, and his parents were already aware of what was going on, and they had reported it to police, which is very important to remember. So the community, he goes on to say, the community would not expect law enforcement officers to encourage a 13 to 14-year-old child towards racial hatred, distrust of police, and violent extremism, encouraging the child's fixation on ISIS, Fleming said in granting the permanent stay. Burgess has said he was not making a comment on the judiciary, but indicated that the information I have before me may be different. Once again, not telling us what the information is. He's just alluding to maybe there's other information I have. I have secrets and I can't tell you. It's so top secret. It's national security. It's a threat. It's a threat to our nation. So I can't tell anyone. Can't divulge any of it. Top secret. Speaking generally about the radicalisation of children, Burgess said, when ASIO and the Australian Federal Police come along, we're at the wrong end of the scale. Yeah, well, yep, okay, that's true. He goes on to say, I'd stress that if we're coming up to someone who is suspected of being radicalized or we know is radicalized, we're at the wrong end of the scale. The radicalization of minors is a broader society problem that we must address. Occasionally, sadly, there are minors that have actually planned acts of terrorism, and that has to be dealt with by us and the police. The problem is dealing with it is not getting online and then feeding the fixation. That is not dealing with it. Goes on. We do not radicalize people. We investigate threats to security. So I'm going to go back and just talk a little about this threats to security. Okay. We'll continue on, and we will use more intrusive powers if we see and have the ability to justify those more intrusive powers to understand the nature of the threat, to either help it be mitigated or reduced or dealt with under law. The boy's lawyers have previously said the entire saga has had an enormous impact on the child and the family. Thomas was charged with 2 offences in October 2021, but was granted a permanent stay 2 years later. McCartney of the AFP, he's told the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Law Enforcement he did not take the decision to approve the controlled operation lightly. He cited a set of exceptional circumstances, but acknowledged it was a very challenging and complex matter. So, part of the problem that I see, for one, is the element of secrecy that our agencies insist, even though this has been through the courts, okay, and this is, I think, one of the biggest problems is they continue and they insist on keeping secrecy. And it just helps to feed the narrative that our intelligence agencies, that our police agencies cannot be trusted because they will not divulge all the information. They will not go out and then say, hey, this is why we can justify it. Now, I just want to go back through some of the wording that he used. When he says in this paragraph, he says, we will use more intrusive powers if we see and have the ability. He says, the ability, if we have the ability to justify. This is, I think this is another part of the problem, not just within what he's saying for ASIO with this case. This is part of the problem that we are seeing with Australian law enforcement in general. As I've spoken about before, we have had record amount of shootings, as in police shooting civilians here in Queensland. And I think part of the problem, I think the reason why we have this is because of the wording where you, like he said, you have the ability to justify. So police are going into situations and instead of maybe taking a split second to think, justify. Can I justify? Should I be justifying? Is this something that is morally and ethically above board? But instead of going through all of these, scenarios, all they're thinking is, do I have the ability to justify? And if your first and major concern is, do I have the ability to justify? Immediately, you have given yourself consent. Immediately, you've given yourself consent. If your first question is, can I justify? Can I justify this? And if you're saying, yeah, I can justify it, well, immediately he's going, well, then I've given myself consent to do whatever it is I'm thinking about. I've given myself consent to pull the trigger. It doesn't matter whether maybe it's not absolutely necessary, it's not really justified ethically or morally, but no, I can justify it by law You've asked the question within yourself. You said, "Yep, I can." So you're just giving yourself consent to do it. All this, all Burgess has done is said, we're going to use that. They want to use intrusive powers for a young boy, and all they said was, "We have the ability to justify." So they haven't gone through and say, "Hey, it's not really ethical, it's not moral, it's just, yep, we have the ability to justify it." So immediately they've given themselves the consent to do what they want to do. And also, when McCartney from the AFP, he's told the Parliamentary Committee on Law Enforcement, he said, "We do not take the decision to approve the controlled operation lightly." How many times have you heard people from law enforcement say that? "Oh, we don't take these decisions lightly," which is, I would say, it's the biggest lie. They're not just lying to you, they're lying to themselves. They don't take it lightly. They don't take it seriously because it doesn't affect them. Again, all they think is, hey, do we have the ability to justify it? It's not, should we be justifying it? Does the public expect us to justify it in this way? All it is, can we justify it legally according to Australian law? Can we justify it? Yep. Well, heck, we will go ahead and do whatever we want. No consideration. Now, when they talk about this 13 turning 14-year-old boy being a threat, and they're doing a threat assessment on him. But one thing I think about when you're looking at a threat assessment, you have to look at the person's ability to actually follow through with a threat. He is only 13 when they started their investigation. The whole reason why they started their investigation was because his parents went to police. His parents brought it. They shone a light on his fixation with ISIS. They were a part. They wanted to be a part of fixing the issue that their boy had. So immediately, if you're going to put the threat level at say a red, a high red, and say, "Yep, it's a high threat level." Immediately, when you say, "Well, the parents are on board," the parents are, they're part of fixing the problem. They know about the problem. They brought the problem to our attention, and they know about it, and they're not on board with him. They're not helping him with his fixation. They are against it. Immediately, you would be dropping that threat level down to maybe like an orange or something like that. And then you look at it and think, well, he's only 13. What kind of resources does he have? He doesn't have access to a lot of money or finances. Even if his parents were wealthy, his parents are on board with what's going on. They brought the problem to you, so they're not going to give him money to help feed the issue. They are monitoring his activities. Again, brings the threat level down. You got to see, well, what kind of what kind of network does he have? Who else is he dealing with? He's 13. He doesn't have a vast network where he's out there dealing with all these other high level criminals. He's just dealing with people online. He's looking at videos. He's researching stuff online. He doesn't have a vast network that he's connecting with. He doesn't have a lot of connections. Again, threat levels going down. He's only 13 to 14 years old. Doesn't have access to money, connections, weapons. It's hard for him to get any access to vehicles to get around or communication devices. Hard to get access to that, let alone getting access. He doesn't have access, obviously, to any devices which would enable him to communicate covertly, because police were monitoring all his activity online anyway. And then to put it, get on top of all this, he's very young, he's very naive, and he's autistic, and he doesn't have the intellectual capacity to to perhaps really follow through on any of these possible threats that they're talking about. And yet they have him sitting at, if you're reading this, you'd think they have him sitting at a high level threat to the nation. But this is the problem when you have law enforcement, people in power just trying to cover themselves. They don't want to share all the information. They want to keep everything secret. Keeping everything secret, not telling, keeping everything secret, trying to tell you, oh, look, we know a lot more. Don't ask too many questions. There's a lot more to the story. Okay, there's a lot more to the story. I would venture to say that there's not much more to the story, that Victorian police and the Australian Federal Police screwed up, and that they should be being held accountable, that the head of ASIO should be held accountable, that they should get rid of the intelligence organization section out of the acronym. This is the problem when you just build your law enforcement agencies on keeping secrets. As I said previously, our bureaucrats, a lot of our systems, our bureaucratic systems, are built on a sophist philosophy. They just talk in riddles. It doesn't make sense. They're just trying to justify everything they do, but it's all built on a web of lies at the end of it all. I think there's a lot more for them to answer for. I think they're trying to cover up the true story. They're trying to cover up their own failings, and there's a lot more to answer for. That's my opinion. I'm Jay Fallon. Thank you for listening to The Slippery Slope.
They just fuel a desire that will take me higher. I'm on fire because nothing's gonna bring me down. Nothing's gonna bring me down. Nothing's gonna stop me now. No more demons to be done. No nothing's gonna just focus on me goal. Nothing's gonna stop me now. Nothing's gonna hold me down. Got my eye on the prize. Gonna set it